The downfall of Ricky Starks in All Elite Wrestling needs to be studied. It is something that could not have been imagined just a couple of years ago when Ricky Starks was one of the hottest young talent that AEW had. There was no doubting Ricky Starks' ability on the mic, in the ring, as a character. He had everything in the palm of his hands, and it looked like at one point AEW had major plans for their hottest up-and-coming star. However, we are now nearly a year away from Ricky being on AEW TV, and the longer that his absence has been and the longer the situation goes, the messier and messier it becomes. And while many people are quick to blame Ricky Starks and the talent in this scenario, the reality is, from everything we know so far, it all seems to point back to one person. That person being Tony Khan. And while Ricky is not necessarily without his own faults, as I'm sure he would even admit, the reality of the situation is much of the escalation and confusion around this entire scenario has been because of bad management from AEW. Ricky Starks was not on TV ever since he lost the tag team titles alongside Big Bill, and ever since then it has been a weird situation. We had heard that Ricky may have been injured, although Ricky even disputed that point. We had heard that he had negated creative and he didn't want to enter into a feud with his former tag team partner in Big Bill because he felt like that wasn't the best thing for Bill nor himself. And this led to months and months of not hearing a peep from Ricky Starks. It wasn't until he started making appearances for House of Glory and then eventually GCW that we did end up hearing from Ricky Starks. And this led to him doing a now unsanctioned interview from AEW's standpoint with Chris Van Vliet, where while he was asked about the company and his status with AEW, he had hinted that he doesn't know what's going on and maybe had insinuated that they're just kind of sitting in at home. The reality is, he never said anything that was too outrageous. Ricky Starks was just kind of being the cordial party. Ricky was being the guy who was telling his truth, but without taking direct shots at AEW. Meanwhile, you have a situation where while Ricky is at home and he's not doing anything, he is simply getting paid to sit on the couch, you have Tony Khan going out there and doing interviews saying that Ricky is not clear to compete when Ricky was the one who said that he indeed was. So either that is bad management or it is deliberate. And when you delve into what happened around the entire GCW situation, that's when this whole thing goes from bad to worse, because Ricky Starks makes his way down the escalator at the New Meadowlands Mall in New Jersey, and he is making his GCW debut, and he's making it clear that he is going to be in GCW. Meanwhile, you have Tony Khan taking umbrage with comments that were made recently after the fact by Effie, who had basically taken a shot at Tony Khan because of the fact that Tony had booked the Hammerstein Ballroom for AEW weeks in advance of GCW appearing in the same venue. And this led to Effie taking direct shots at Tony, as well as talking about one thing that Tony does not like people talking about, that being his relationship with his father. And as soon as those words came from Effie's mouth, Ricky Starks was immediately pulled from all of his GCW shows. He was still allowed to appear at the House of Glory shows. However, for GCW, Ricky was no longer on those cards. And this was a great point of contention amongst fans online who were speculating that this was in some way, shape, or form a punishment for some of the media tours that Ricky Starks was on. However, that was disputed by some of the reports we had heard from the AEW side, which said that the deal was that Tony Khan did not want his talent appearing on GCW because of the comments that Effie had made. And all of that would have been fine and good and understandable if Chris Jericho didn't make an appearance at a GCW show just a couple of weeks later. And if Chris Jericho didn't make an appearance at that GCW show while standing in the ring with Effie, the same person who reportedly was the reason for Ricky Starks being taken off of GCW shows. And if that is allowed to happen, and it's something that Tony Khan obviously allowed to happen because it was in efforts of building up a pay-per-view main event at Final Battle between Chris Jericho and Matt Cardona for the Ring of Honor World Championship, then it makes it a little weird that as of right now, Ricky Starks has not been added back to these cards. It makes it even more weird that AEW has not commented on this situation. And what makes this so much more messy is it looks like there are different standards for talent who are in Tony Khan's good graces and talent who may not be. And while you can argue that Ricky was wrong for maybe doing interviews that he shouldn't have done, the fact of the matter is, if Chris Jericho can go out there and not only compete at a GCW show, but do that with the same person that Tony Khan took umbrage with, then what exactly does that mean for Ricky? Because it does seem like they are holding Ricky down. It does seem like Ricky Starks is being punished, and he's really the only one being punished for that situation. Now, there's going to be a lot of people who say that it's a bit more complicated than that. Either way, Tony Khan is paying the talent. But the fact of the matter is, if you are not going to have Ricky Starks appear on your show, if you are not going to book him in a manner that fits him, or even book him, period, then you are doing the fans, Ricky Starks, and your own name brand a disservice. Because the fact of the matter is, one thing that has hurt AEW a lot over the past calendar year has been the bad publicity they have gotten. They got bad publicity with the Ricky Starks situation. They've gotten bad publicity with the CM Punk situation. They've gotten bad publicity with the Penta and Rey Fenix situation. And all of those situations have one underlying dominant factor. That is, they stem from what seems to be bad management at the top. This is not an indictment on Tony Khan's ability to book the show. This is not an indictment on Tony Khan's character. This is not an indictment on him, the man. However, there is clearly something wrong with AEW management, and nothing personifies it better, in my view, than this whole Ricky Stark situation that grows messier by the day. Hopefully, there's a resolution soon. The reality is Ricky's contract seems to be up at some point in 2025, and it looks more and more likely that he will end up in WWE when it's all said and done. But hey, I guess we'll see.